Mara wakes up at 6:47 a.m. Nothing unusual. She checks her phone before she's even fully conscious. A habit, not a decision. She scrolls. She doesn't know it, but in the 3 seconds it takes her thumb to move, a system somewhere has already measured her, how long she paused on a video, how fast she scrolled past the next one, what kind of morning she's about to have, decided by something she's never seen and never agreed to. She makes coffee. She checks her bank app, a routine glance, nothing more. But behind that glance sits a number she's never been shown in full, a risk score built from her spending patterns, her payment history, maybe even how quickly she typed her password. That number will decide, months from now, whether she gets an apartment, a car, a second chance on something she hasn't even asked for yet. She applies for a job before leaving the house. She spends 20 minutes on the resume. It will never be read by a human being. A piece of software scans it for keywords in under a second and quietly decides she isn't a match. She'll never know why. She'll just wonder, weeks later, why no one called. Nothing dramatic happened this morning. That's the point. Somewhere between 14 and 20 invisible decisions were made about Mara's life before she finished her coffee, and she was awake for none of them. We tell ourselves a comforting story, that we're free agents, that we choose what we see, who we love, what we buy, what job we land, that these are the product of our will, our taste, our effort. It's a good story. Increasingly, it's not a true one, not because of some conspiracy, not a secret room with men in suits pulling levers, something quieter, and in a way worse, a set of systems so ordinary, so folded into daily life, that we stop noticing their systems at all. We think we're choosing. We're being sorted. Take the feed you scroll every day. You believe you're seeing what interests you. You're actually seeing what keeps you scrolling, a different thing entirely. The algorithm doesn't care what's true or good for you or what you choose if you slowed down and thought about it for 1 second. It cares about a single number, attention, and it is extremely good at finding the version of you that gives up the most of it. Take your credit score or its newer, stranger cousins, the risk models banks, landlords, and insurers increasingly lean on, which go far past whether you pay the bill on time. Some of these systems weigh how your phone's battery drains, how often you change addresses, how you type, numbers you've never seen, built from data you didn't know you were handing over, deciding something as big as whether you get to rent an apartment. Take hiring. A large share of major companies now filter resumes through automated systems before a human ever lays eyes on them. Most applicants never learned their resume was rejected by software, not a person. They assumed they weren't good enough. Often they were plenty good enough. They simply didn't happen to use the word the machine was scanning for. None of this is hidden because it's classified. It's hidden because it's boring enough and technical enough that we collectively agreed not to look too closely. The instructions are published in privacy policies nobody reads and research papers nobody outside a university opens. It sits in plain sight, protected mostly by our own disinterest. And here's the trap underneath it. Every time a system sorts you, you adjust, often without realizing it. You post the thing that performs instead of the thing you meant to say. You pay off the small, easy debt instead of the one that actually matters, because somewhere you read it helps your score. You rewrite your resume for a piece of software instead of for a hiring manager who might actually understand your story. Bit by bit, without ever deciding to, you start optimizing your life with the machine reading it, instead of living it for yourself. That's not freedom with extra steps. That's training. So how does it actually work under the hood? Strip away the mystery. And every one of these systems is doing the same basic thing, turning a human life into a number and then making a decision based only on the number, never on the life sitting behind it. It starts with collection. More data than most people assume, and more mundane than most people assume. Not just what you post, but how long you hover before posting it. Not just what you buy, but how you move through a store, how fast your thumb taps by now, what hour of the night you tend to spend money you probably shouldn't. Every platform, every app, every card swipe quietly files something away, indefinitely, without asking twice. Then comes waiting. Not every data point counts equally, and the system, invisibly and proprietarily, decides which ones count most. Maybe your zip code weighs more than it should. Maybe how fast you reply to messages weighs more than what you actually say. You will never see the weights. The company that built them treats them as more closely guarded than the algorithm itself. Because the weights are the actual product, and then the part that should genuinely worry you. The feedback loop. The score doesn't just describe you. It starts to shape you, get flagged as higher risk, and you're offered worse terms, which makes it harder to build a clean history, which keeps the score low, which quietly confirms the original flag was right all along. Get ranked low by a delivery app, and you get fewer of the good jobs, which drags your rating down further, which locks you out further still. It behaves like a thermostat reading a broken sensor, endlessly correcting toward a number that was wrong from the very first reading, and every correction pushes you a little further from who you actually are. Somewhere tonight, in the back end of the gig app, a rider will call that he gets offered fewer and fewer of the good deliveries, and she's never told why. Her rating dipped half a point 3 weeks ago, after a late delivery that was traffic's fault, not hers. She doesn't know that half point exists. She just knows the work has gotten thinner. She assumes she's doing something wrong. She isn't. The machine reading her is. Here's the part almost nobody says out loud. The score was never really about her. It was a partial, sometimes wrong signal standing in for a person, making decisions in her name, without her permission, and without any real way to appeal. But a system built on rules is a system that can be read. And a system that can be read can, within honest limits, be understood well enough that it stops quietly running your life and starts becoming just one more tool you use on your own terms, the same way you'd learn the rules of a game you didn't choose to be playing, so you could finally start playing it on purpose. Start by finding out what you're actually being scored on. In most places, you have a legal right to request the data companies hold on you, credit bureaus, some platforms, data brokers. Almost nobody exercises it. The request takes about 10 minutes and hands you the first real page of your own file. Build signal on purpose instead of by accident. If hiring software filters by keyword, mirror the language of the posting in your resume, not to lie, but so the truth about you actually reaches a human being on the other side. If your credit file is thin, a small secured card, used lightly and paid off every month, builds real, verifiable history faster than most people expect. And stop letting a single algorithm hold a monopoly over your opportunities. Apply directly to companies, not only through job boards about filters first. Build some reputation across more than one platform, so no single feed decides alone whether you get seen. Diversify the same way you diversify a portfolio, because in a very real sense, that's exactly what your visibility and your creditworthiness have become, an asset class, and right now most people are dangerously under-diversified in it, without ever realizing that's the game they're in. None of this makes the system vanish. But once you can see the dials, you stop being only a player inside somebody else's game, and you start adjusting a few of them yourself. That shift, small as it sounds from the outside, is the entire difference between being scored and starting to read the scorer. Zoom out, and the stakes stretch well past any one person's credit file or resume. When millions of decisions, who gets housing, who gets hired, who gets seen at all, start flowing through opaque scoring systems instead of human judgment, something shifts underneath democracy itself. We built courts, elections, and appeals processes on the assumption that a decision could always be questioned, explained, argued with by an actual person. A model doesn't argue with you. It just returns a number and moves on to the next case. To be fair to machines for a moment, the systems they replace were never neutral either. A loan officer's quiet bias and a model's blind spot are both distortions of the same truth. They're just distorted in differently invisible ways. The old world wasn't some golden age of fairness we accidentally traded away. It's not that simple, and it never was. What does seem true is this. Earlier generations had to become financially literate to survive an economy built on debt and credit. Before that, whole societies had to become literate in the written word, or lose power over their own stories to whoever could read and write on their behalf. We're standing at the edge of the same kind of shift, just wearing different clothes. Algorithmic literacy, understanding, even roughly, how the systems around you decide things, is becoming the modern equivalent of learning to read. Back to Mara on that same ordinary Tuesday. Same phone, same coffee, same scroll. But this time she pauses half a second before opening the app, just long enough to remember what's actually happening behind the glass. She pulls up her credit report for the first time in years. She rewrites one line of her resume, not to please a piece of software, but with the software finally, consciously, in mind. Nothing about her life changed today. Not really, but the file on her, the one she never used to know existed, just got reopened. This time, by her, on her own terms for the first time. You've been carrying a file like that your entire life. The only question left worth asking is whether you're the one holding it or the one being held by it, because the systems aren't going away, and pretending they don't exist was never really an option. The only real choice left is whether you learn to read the code quietly running underneath your life, or spend the rest of it being written by people who already have.